Welcome to the Life is Relationships podcast, where we share biblical truths about marriage, parenting, and discipleship. The desire of CTCI is to see the hearts of individuals and families restored in their relationship to the Father, and for them to be empowered to have thriving, godly relationships that impact the communities around them. I'm your host, AJ Selby, and on today's episode, we'll be talking with Larry and Susan Pons as they share with us about why it is so important to always be dreaming with your spouse. Take a listen. Well, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and join me on today's podcast. One of the things that you guys talk about when you're doing your train to train teachings is the importance of couples dreaming together and how it's a thing that's so easily lost in the busyness of work and raising children and all of that. And can you just kind of share with our listeners what that looked like for you guys when you realized that you had lost that dreaming together, but how you found dreaming together again and the richness that it brought to your life?
I think it was just one of those moments in time when the Lord revealed to us that life was so busy. I knew that we needed time together. And so one of the things we always enjoyed doing was dining together. And if we could just go out and enjoy a meal, it would be wonderful. But we were so busy in those days, so involved, that I knew that if we just went out, and because I had tried it before, it was not going to be very successful. So one of the guidelines I laid out for Susan and I remember we went to a very special place. I don't remember which city it was in. And I said, just one rule for tonight. And I don't know if I said that on the way there. I think it did. But I said, we cannot talk about the ministry. We cannot talk about the children. All we can talk about is each other.
So when we were seated in the restaurant and settled in, we looked at each other and we just stared at each other, waiting for the other one to bring up a topic just about us. And all of a sudden we realized we didn't know how to talk to each other than what was going on with our 4 children, what was going on in the ministry, what was going on with the other issues of life. And it was that staring at each other. And as a woman, I always say, fish swim, birds fly, women cry. And I felt the tears rise up in my eyes. And then all of a sudden, Larry just started saying these words.
Well, I have to say, it was an elegant restaurant, beautiful atmosphere. I just thought she was going to enjoy it. And she starts crying. And I'm saying, what in the world is going on? But I instinctively knew that I had laid out some guidelines, and I realized that staring at each other was not going to get it. And so I just said these words. I just said, and I thought in terms of dreaming. We always had plans together. We always dreamed about things of the future, things we'd like to have, especially when we were dating. We were childhood sweethearts, and we would always talk about the future. So I asked her a simple question like, well, if you had any house, if money was not an issue, what would your house look like? And she just kind of looked at me. I said, no, seriously, I want to know if money's not the issue. And she started expressing herself.
Yes, I began, because I suppose women basically think about homes throughout life, really, and nesting, all that sort of thing. But I began designing my kitchen with him and the rooms that I would have larger and what the kids' rooms would look like. And it was very elementary. It could be elementary in some people's eyes, but it began to lift me out of a place where I was just staring at him, questioning him. How do we get back to that place of having some kind of dream or goal or vision together?
So when she asked me, all right, now, what do you think? I mean, I had a 50-foot TV screen in front of me, and the ceiling would open up and we'd see the stars and the fireplace would come on automatically, these kinds of things, and it was fun. It actually just took us in a place where we started laughing, not crying. Oh my gosh, I'm sitting there going, oh, finally,
Yeah.
we're hitting something. And so that was the beginning of just every time we would go out and we would take these moments that I would come up with a question or I would come up with something where we would have to dream together. And one very interesting thing happened. I remember saying, I said, if there was one place you could go right now, something you could do that you would love to do, that again, money is not the issue, that we're just dreaming. And she expressed to me what she wanted to do, and it didn't matter whether I agreed or not. It's what she wanted to do. And then she asked me, and I said, I don't know why at the time. I had a brother who lived in France, and I just thought of the fact that, well, if we could just be in a castle in France where people would just serve you and just, I was just going, I would get extravagant. The amazing thing, I guess it was 10, maybe 12, 15 years later, all of a sudden, one night, we're in this castle in France and people are serving us. Hadn't thought about that since that night. And I remember when we got into the room, there's one of these beds you had to step up on. You had steps to get into. And I remember I pulled her closer to me and I said, it happened. And she said, what? We haven't even talked about this in so many years. And I said, we're in the castle in France. And, people are serving us. I said, our dreams actually have come true. God is that good. He heard us. And even though it was funny at the time and it was so out of the reach, all of a sudden the realities of just those intimate moments, and I think that's the key, don't you agree, Susan? It was just intimate moments. We enjoyed each other. I'd love to see her over a candlelight, not because I saw her in bright lights all the time, but it was just something special about us just being able to share together, and no one else could come in between that, and no one else could take that away from us. It was our dreams. The fact that God actually answered that dream was really remarkable for us.
Well, and I think the whole thing was a learning experience too, because in marriage, it's one thing to have dreams together before marriage, but it's so important to keep some types of dreams alive between you after the children come, because they can take over our dreams because they're children. And then when they're teenagers, it's going back to that place that we have to have together. And then when they're all gone from the home, it's developing another set of dreams for just he and I. And then now that we're growing older, we have to return to that place of keeping a dream alive, a vision alive for the last parts of our lives. And it's very important in a marriage to have those moments together of dreaming the impossible. There's a song written about that, to dream the impossible dream. But it brings us together emotionally, and just brings our personalities back to life.
Well, we fell in love early on. I don't know if you would have called it the same kind of love that we were now expressing in our marriage, but Susan didn't marry a head of the ministry. That was not on her mind. I didn't marry a rock star or Broadway star. I married her, and she married me, and we had intimate moments all our lives, and we enjoyed those moments together. And all of a sudden, it was like God was refreshing those in our lives. But we had to make the decision. We had to make the choices. And I have to say that responsibility fell on me because I saw her really in her successful ways, but the busyness, the duty of all that we were doing was taking away the intimacy of who we were. And all of a sudden, we rediscovered ourselves in a very special ways. And I think every time we went out to dine or something, something special was happening. It was rare when we did not enjoy each other in those moments, whereas we didn't know what to do or didn't know what to say. We had enough of those experiences along the way that we did not want that to happen again.
Yes. And in a way, it's returning to covenant. You know, God never asked us to make covenant with ministry or our work, and especially with our children. He did not ask us to make covenant, but he did ask that our marriage, that your marriage be a covenant relationship. And so that covenant relationship is such a mixture, and you can't leave out the spontaneity that should be occurring in that covenant relationship.
I was I was so fascinated that God cared enough to allow us not only to do that and make provision for those moments, but that He would take him to as far as we would dream, which was your question. That how do dreams come alive? I mean, we serve an amazing God, and He is wonderful, and He cares. That was we never really had to talk so much that God was doing this. We were just thrilled the fact that He cared that much about us to allow us to enjoy each other.
Yes, and there have been many dreams he has fulfilled, not just that particular one, but that particular one taught us a lesson that we really needed to learn in marriage.
Yeah. Gosh, that's so beautiful to for you to be able to look back over your life and see not just the castle in France, but any other number of dreams that you've had that you've seen come to fruition, and to just have that special place of knowing that God loves you so much
Mhm.
that He saw into that intentional moment that you took to draw that out of your wife and to do that together. For anyone that's listening that maybe feels like they're stuck in this place and they realize that, oh my goodness, we've stopped dreaming. What are some things that you would some starting points, some steps that you would give them to start dreaming together again?
I think even as you're asking these questions, I think that wasn't we didn't avoid talking about our children. Uh, we didn't avoid talking about the practical things of life. And there were many dreams that we had that were very practical every day. What really became reality is that we were able not only to talk about those things that were hard, but those things that we really desire. And to try to answer your question, it was the very practical things too that we dreamed about. We wanted our children to be outstanding citizens. We wanted them to grow up to be good husbands and good fathers and good wives and good mothers. And that was a dream. It was a vision. And we would talk about that. We would have times when we would just go out and have a meal together where we did just talk about the children, but to see the reality of what they became, that the promises of God, that you take them at the moment that you receive them, and then you go the years and you see how it manifests itself. The encouragement to me is that you approach every day with that sense that no matter how small of matter it may appear at the time, just obey God in those moments and times. And then He takes those aspirations that you talked about before you were married and makes reality out of them as you work on them together through marriage. It's His grace coming in on a day-to-day basis on the smallest things of life when you're asking your children uh, to live a certain way and then watch them mature in that and see them, their families, and now to have the grandchildren and just be just as content with them as we were with the small things. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I'm certainly saying that it was not just dreaming about unrealistic things. It was dreaming and being focused on the very practical things of life too. But we had to take time together to do that. And I think it was in those moments in time where it wasn't harsh. It was nice. It was quiet. It was even romantic. But we could talk about some very serious things going on the day to day that put us together, put us on the same page, put us on the same sentence.
Yeah.
And how to deal with things.
So what I'm hearing you say, and I think that this would ring true. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but when it comes to dreaming together within a marriage, there comes an intentionality with every season that
Yes.
you two are both coming together, that you're taking the time to say, hey, we're going to separate ourselves. We're going to go to a place and be intentional about the conversations that we're having. And it's not just about how's work, how's the kids, is the dog okay? It's taking the time to separate yourself from all of that, even though there are the practical things of raising your children in your
Yes.
home and those things. But it's the main point is you are taking the time to step intentionally away from that stuff and have the conversations where you can dream.
And, AJ, it turned into, in our lives anyway, from raising the children, they're leaving, to we had to care for our parents. And so the lessons we learned back then with ministry and children and separating ourselves, we intentionally had to remind us that even in the difficulties of, but the privileges also of caring for parents, that we had to separate. There were those moments we had to separate ourselves and to keep that something wonderful between us in order to keep carrying on. And so, as I said before, it was a huge lesson that we learned that night around the table in a restaurant in Atlanta, Georgia. I still remember the city.
I thought it was Chicago.
No, we had not been to Chicago then.
Well, that is wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time
Yes.
to talk to us.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else that you want to share? Any last words for maybe somebody that maybe they feel inspired by this conversation, in any direction that you want to give them as they leave today?
I think one thing is that what it did for Susan and I was put us into agreement.
Mm-hmm.
We learned to agree. Even in our dreams, we came to, if I were dreaming about France, she said, well, I don't want to go there. That would have put us in a place, well, maybe we can dream about going, to somewhere else. But the agreement, when we started talking about the practical things of life, our children, it really gave us a vision together.
Mm-hmm.
And when we say dream has an aura about it that it's something that's so out there.
Right.
But vision is something that you take steps towards every day. And it just kept us in agreement to be able to approach life again together rather than separately. The way I would say something to one of our children, or the way she would say something to one of our children, we could talk about those things because we wanted the best for our children. We wanted to do it rightly before God. So I think that's really the key here, is that we were coming into agreement, not only with practical things, but also in our dreams.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and we would love if you left us a review. For more information about CTCI and our upcoming programs, be sure to check out ctcilife.org. This podcast is a production of Christian Training Center International. It is produced by AJ Selby, Rebecca Wall, and Seth Stradling. It is edited, mixed, and mastered by AJ Selby and Corey Kastmeyer.